Stand by now for See It Now with Edward R. Murrow, which originates in Studio 41 in New York City. Alcoa, Aluminum Company of America, in cooperation with CBS Television, presents the distinguished reporter and news analyst Edward R. Murrow in See It Now, edited and produced by Mr. Murrow and Fred W. Friendly. A weekly presentation of Aluminum Company of America, the nation's leading producer of aluminum. Now speaking to you from the control room of Studio 41 is the editor of See It Now, Edward R. Murrow.
Good evening. This tattered hunk of cloth is a hurricane flag. We borrowed it from the Coast Guard station at Sandwich on Cape Cod. It survived 2 hurricanes in 11 days. It is the traditional method of warning along the New England coast. If you live along the coast, you pray that the hurricane won't hit. And if it doesn't, well, at least you expect to have adequate warning. On Edna last week, we had at least 24 hours of warning. Her movements were reported as completely as those of the president or of a movie star. We went down to Bermuda to study with the men who track and diagnose hurricanes, out with the weather service of MATS. We flew in a B-29, and we started with a briefing at Kindley Air Force Base in Bermuda.
Gentlemen, we're going after Hurricane Edna this trip. She's located approximately 620 miles west-southwest of Bermuda. Our flight plan will be approximately 10 hours. Our flight level at 10,000 feet. Our penetration level will be 10,000 feet. Your emergency signals remain the same. There will be 3 short rings for bailout, 1 long ring to go. 6 short rings for ditching, 1 long for impact. If we have any trouble on takeoff, I'll hit the alarm bell once, leave it on, and you'll get in your crash positions, please. You'll wear your Mae Wests and your parachutes at all times in the storm. Okay, gentlemen, let's buckle up our chutes, inspect our equipment, get the down locks, and get aboard.
Right after the briefing and just before takeoff, we talked to R.H. Simpson of the U.S. Weather Bureau, who has made a science of studying hurricanes from the inside. He went along on this mission to explore Edna.
Well, a hurricane is a very large atmospheric storm with circular winds which spiral counterclockwise over an area of perhaps 400 to 600 miles in diameter in towards a center known as the eye. The hurricane is not it's not the largest storm. It's not nearly as large as the storms that visit us each year and provide our normal day-to-day weather changes, but it certainly is the most violent of all storms, considering the energy that it expends. Hurricanes are very similar the world over. They form in about the same way, they behave in about the same way. In the Atlantic, in the North Atlantic, they're known as hurricanes. That's simply a colloquialism or a local name. In the Pacific, at least west of the date line, they're usually known as typhoons. Near the Philippines, they're sometimes called bagios, and near Australia, willy-willies. We're poking into several storms to find out if we can find out, first, how the storm uses the energy of its surroundings to grow to be a monster, and secondly, what it is that makes the storm move in the direction that it does move.
This mission is known as Duck Edna. We're in a modified B-29 at 10,000 feet, about 100 miles west of Bermuda. We're indicating 220 miles airspeed. We're going out to the Hurricane Edna. We will penetrate the eye, take measurements, fly all around the eye, and then come out again. It should be explained that this is in no sense a stunt. This is a routine mission. You might call it a service by the United States Air Force to the United States taxpayers. We will go in and measure not only the eye of this hurricane, but the speed at which it's moving, the density of the cloud, and this information will then be transmitted immediately to weather stations in all areas that might possibly be affected. The general opinion up here seems to be that Edna is not going to behave like a lady, but we will find out about that when we get to the outer fringe of the hurricane. We are told that the winds on the edge will be about 135 miles an hour, and the boys who are flying this mission say it may be a little bit rough before we get back. We're now flying through light cumulus clouds. The sea is calm. I'm not doing much good sitting here in the co-pilot seat, so I'm going to get out of here now and turn it over to him.
Engineer pilot, keep those scanners on an engine check while we're in this area.
Roger. Will do. You give me the scanners check now, please.
Roger. 3 and 4 checking okay in the rear, engineer.
Yes, this left scanner, engineer. 1 and 2 look good from the rear. Roger, thank you.
I'm going to see if I can chat with the skipper a minute if he isn't too busy. Skipper, how far do you reckon we are from the eye?
I figure about 95 miles now.
And in which direction?
To the left.
Sorry, am I leaning on the wheel?
No, that's entirely all right. We're just about to make our turn to the left, so wind is off our left wing at the moment.
This has been rather a quiet trip so far, hasn't it?
It's extremely quiet now. It's surprising.
But agreeable, huh?
Agreeable. We're going to have a little fun here in a few moments.
You think it'll get worse later?
I think so.
Right. As one of the boys here said a moment ago, there's a storm around here somewhere. There are winds of 85 miles down on the surface of the sea. The whole area looks as though a careless plowman had driven along on a blue velvet carpet, and when his plow turned up, it was snow.
Engineer is pilot.
Go ahead, pilot this, the engineer.
Let's drag off a couple inches on manifold pressure. Airspeed's getting up around 240. We don't want to knock the wings out of this thing.
Roger, sir. Wings out there. Tips are bobbing up and down pretty good now.
All right, just try to keep it around 210 if you can.
All right, Roger. 210 it is.
Well, it looks quite a bit higher than it has been. I'd say it's pretty far up there. There's a little bit at about 12,000 scattered condition, and then the solid overcast, I'd say, would be up fairly high, at least 16,000, 18,000 or higher. Weather reports are being taken every minute now, put down on a chart. So far, the aircraft is surprisingly steady. There is an area over to the right that looks like a huge amphitheater, which could possibly be the eye, but we can't be sure yet.
How's the radar picture look?
About 9 miles coming in fast. Seemed to be a definite break at the end of 9 miles, and the strong return stayed away.
That radar beam searches for the blip, which means a heavy cloud mass, just as radar hunts out an enemy plane.
Oh, Roger, radar. It looks pretty rough on the surface there. The winds are around 70 knots, and it looks very dark ahead. Looks very turbulent. We have now passed out of the cleared area and seem to be flying through milk. If you can't see anything out the front, don't blame our cameraman, Leo Rossi. We can't see anything either. We're making a turn to the right. Still searching. Radar is reaching out, trying to find the eye. Skipper of the aircraft told me a few minutes ago that flying was sometimes long hours of boredom interspersed with a few minutes of sheer terror. We have had no terror as yet, except this weird light which fades off in the distance to that dirty, ominous dark. No sign of the sun except this dim illumination. The whole surface of the ocean is undulating like some huge giant was shaking a carpet. Each huge wave seems to be dragging another along behind it. Now the rain is beginning to smash down on the perspex. It isn't possible to see the tip of the wing. And everything is gray and very lonely. This is no place to lose an engine.
Okay, weather, pick us up here about 2 miles, about 2 miles from the ridge. The return is breaking, and I can pick it up on the far side.
Here we go. The co-pilot says, here we go. We're in the slot, and we have to break through very shortly now. Everyone looking intently ahead now. The skipper calls occasionally if anyone can see the surface wind. The wind keeps shifting. The temperature drops and rises. The pressure changes. The altimeter can easily be 1,000, 1,500 feet off. We're still remaining at 7,500. Mostly now, this 140,000-pound ship, heavier than a Constellation, is on an even keel. But occasionally, we're being jabbed by short, sharp blows. We've hit something with a bang, audible above the roar of the motors. A solid sheet of water. Get him. Nose is way down. Now we're going up again. Getting a might walk out here now, but considerably lighter ahead. Hold out a little now. There's the sun. We're in. It's to the left. Now we have light and we're less lonesome. I can't see the eye yet, but it's going to feel good. Oh, yes, there it is. Oh, a solid bank of white cloud ahead of us now. Thousands of feet of towers over it. Turn the shot go up. We're out. We're dropping off mad. Oh, what a beautiful sight. We're in an amphitheater surrounded by clouds. It looks like a lovely alpine lake surrounded by snow. The area of storm will be right over to the right. The area of storm will be over to the right. This basin is probably, what would you say, 20 miles across? It's a good 20 miles across. It's about 20 miles across, and right in the center of the storm is a ship. How big would you say that ship is? It's about 10,000 tons. It's about 10 to 12,000 ton ship right in the center of the eye. The wind is probably 50 or 60 miles an hour down there. We will drop right in the center of the eye a radio device which will send out signals, and it is hoped that it will indicate the movement of this hurricane.
We got an op coming back.
The operations and weather deck at the front of the B-29 and the radio shack at the tail are 100 feet apart and connected by a long tunnel. A pulley system shuttles messages through, and all the intelligence collected by the radar and the drop sound is analyzed up front by the meteorologist, while still in the eye, and then it's dispatched to the rear for radio transmission to weather bureaus along the coast. Duck AF 3459 reports Edna 8I centered 39 degrees, 39 minutes, north 71 degrees, 18 minutes west. Time of observation 1530 Z. On Friday, the Air Force and the Navy made several other penetrations of Edna further north. And a full 24 hours before the eye hit Long Island and New England, the storm warnings were up. In the calm just before the storm, even the ropes sounded apprehensive. R.H. Simpson, the weatherman, after returning from the B-29 mission, had analyzed Edna as a clinically perfect hurricane in the classical sense, a textbook version. The eye was just like a coffee cup, with walls extending up to an even light blue sky above. And there were circular, symmetrical patterns around the eye. The people in the path of the eye could perhaps quarrel with his clinical, poetic approach. But there could be no quarrel with the prediction.
is Ed Scott in an Air Rescue Service helicopter over the Cape Cod area. Hurricane Edna's eye went this way on Saturday afternoon, just 11 days after Carol did her damage. Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, and the Massachusetts coastline from Chatham to New Bedford felt the brunt of both hurricanes. This is the way it looked from 400 feet, and there is just no way of knowing where Carol ended and Edna began.
In 1938, a hurricane no bigger than Carol or Edna killed 680 New Englanders. With Carol, the death was 68. With Edna, only 20. Statistics can be of little comfort for the families of the 68 or 20, and the property damage was enormous. But the warning service is steadily improving, and the alert on Hurricane Edna was a strategic and tactical victory. We thought that some of you who live in New England might like to meet some of the men who helped do it.
Captain Ed Vrabel, radar observer, South Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
Captain Bill DePutron, navigator, Jersey City, New Jersey.
Captain Francis Wilson, aircraft commander, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Captain Charles Fleischer, pilot, Louisville, Kentucky. Captain Anthony Murrow, aerial weather observer, Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Staff Sergeant Holt, Lawrence Holt, scanner, Richmond, California. Staff Sergeant Anderson G. Bannon, radio operator, Norman, Oklahoma. Master Sergeant Matt Benny, engineer, Miles City, Montana. Airman First Class Leo Galvin, radio operator, Akron, Ohio. Staff Sergeant Herman C. Carter, drop sound operator, White City, Kansas.
In the eye of a hurricane, you learn things other than of a scientific nature. You feel the puniness of man and his works. If a true definition of humility is ever written, it might well be written in the eye of a hurricane. It was like being in church, flying there at 1,500 feet over that blue water with the white clouds going up to 37,000 feet. After flying one mission with these young men of the Air Weather Service, only lasting 9 hours, I think they deserve combat pay. Time now for Alcoa, the aluminum company of America.
Everyone talks about the weather, but the farmer is one man who must do something about it. His livestock, his land, his buildings, everything related to his farm is at the mercy of the weather. Now, thanks to the use of aluminum, Alcoa aluminum, the farmer can do something about the weather. When water is needed to supplement natural rainfall, he can use portable irrigation pipes of Alcoa aluminum. These easy-to-move irrigation pipes mean a farmer can bring water to his land when it is needed and where it is needed. These irrigation pipes mean increased yield and higher quality crops. In summertime, when the weather gets hot, a farmer's livestock is better protected in a barn of Alcoa aluminum. Aluminum reflects the hot sun, keeps livestock cooler and healthier. An aluminum-covered barn, properly constructed, will stand up under all kinds of weather with a minimum of maintenance. Barn roofing and siding of Alcoa aluminum are easy to handle, easy to put on. Applied with aluminum nails, they will never rust or streak, never need painting, will last longer. Of course, the farmer can protect his wooden outbuildings from the weather, too, by using aluminum paint with Alcoa pigments. It's the best paint for farm use. Aluminum paint means longer life for farm equipment and farm machinery, less maintenance for the farmer all year round. And no matter what the weather, there's no better safeguard for the farmer's property than gates and fences of Alcoa aluminum. These light but strong gates are built to withstand all kinds of abuse. and all kinds of weather because they won't rust, won't corrode, and never need painting. Wherever you look on America's modern farms, aluminum is on the job, helping the farmer do something about the weather. Aluminum for the farm is one more example of how Alcoa, since 1888, has continued to pioneer new uses for this vital metal. In this case, new uses of aluminum that mean better farms and better farming. The aluminum from the nation's first and leading producer, Alcoa, Aluminum Company of America.
Last week on this report, we heard certain remarks by Premier Mendes France and German Chancellor Adenauer as to what might happen in Europe after the death of EDC. Tonight, we bring you some unofficial, unscientifically selected comments by what might be called the men on the street. Part of them come from a London pub, others from a workman in Frankfurt, Germany. First, the London pub. Our reporter is Paul Niven, our cameraman Charles Mack.
Mr. Aaron Bevan, the left-wing Labor Party leader, is heading a campaign against German rearmament. What do you think of that?
Well, I think I'd prefer to express an opinion about Aaron Bevan. I think really what he's looking for is a lot of cheaper publicity, which if you'd paid for newspaper rates would have depleted the funds of the Socialist Party.
You don't agree with Mr. Bevan's foreign policy views generally?
No, I don't. And I think one of the most difficult and dangerous things he's doing is endeavor to create trouble between this country and the United States. My own view is that the peace of the world entirely depends upon sympathetic alliance between those two nations, which after all do hold the peace of the world in their hands. As long as they hang together, I don't think there could possibly be any war.
How do you feel about this problem of German rearmament?
I can understand the French objection, because they've suffered so terribly in the last, 50 years in two wars. But surely even Germany might come into the Committee of Nations if she gets a reasonable chance to do so on a reasonable terms.
Thank you. Well, what do you fellows feel about German rearmament? I understand you're not in favor of it.
I say don't arm them. I don't like the rearming of Germany at all.
Why?
Because there's always been trouble when Germany's been armed.
But don't you think these 12 German divisions are needed to defend us against Russia?
Germany divisions will not serve us against Russia.
Why?
Because they're not strong enough for that. Every time that Germany's been armed, there's been world trouble. And while we're in control over Germany, that's the only time we've ever had peace. And that we're likely to have peace.
I gather then you have a lot of sympathy for the French position.
Quite.
Well, in 1900, my grandfather was involved in a war. In 1914, my father was involved in a war. And in 1939 to 45, I was involved in a war. And I think I agree entirely with the French Chamber that to not go ahead at all with the armament or rearmament of Germany. We've seen enough bloodshed, enough damage in France and the Low Countries, and especially here in Great Britain.
But the French argue that Britain should join a new kind of European defense organization along with Germany, France, and the other EDC countries. They say that that would be the best way to integrate Germany into the West. What do you think of that?
Well, France and the Low Countries has always been a buffer state between communist Russia and ourselves. And I think if we have a combined army placed in Western Europe, we are immediately informing the opposition that we are preparing for war, we want war, and we are not going to be the aggressors. 3 generations we've had bloodshed, and where has it got us?
Well, if we don't rearm Germany, they'll go to Russia, in my view. And why should we be afraid of Germany rearmed? We've beat them twice, we can beat them 3 times.
The most articulate reactions about the death of the European defense community came from the West Germans. Our reporter is Dick Hotlet.
How do Germans feel now that France has turned down the European army?
I can say how the Germans feel, but I can say what I think. I think myself, like they did turn the contract down now, I'm glad they did, because we know what friendship we get between Germany and France.
Well, don't you think that Germans and French can be friends?
It can be, but not at the moment, sir. It's too short time after the war.
Well, now, do you think that the French have not forgotten the war, or is there something on the German side that makes Germany hate France?
We don't hate France, and maybe the French don't hate Germans, but we are only a half of Germany at the moment.
Well, now, how do you think things ought to go on from here? The European army is gone. Should Germany set up a national army, or should it have no army at all?
I don't know. They should have a national army or no army at all. That's maybe the time brings that. I can't say nothing about that now.
Well, what would you prefer?
A national army, sir.
Why?
Because in a national army, we know what we fight for, but when I fight together with the French or with any other European army, I don't know, I don't trust them.
Why don't you trust them? I mean, why wouldn't you feel safe in a European army with French allies?
Because I have seen too much in the last war. I've been myself a soldier for 10 years, and we have had friends in the last war, and they left us. We just stand on our own at the last time, so I think we are best on our own in a battle or something like it.
Well, now, it looks as though Germany would not be able to set up a national army without France. Or do you think Germany should go ahead and try to, with the help of America or Great Britain?
With the help of America or Great Britain, they could try, but if they don't get a help, they shouldn't do anything. They should leave it like it is.
Well, do you find that the Germans now dislike France more than they did?
No. We dislike them not more than we have been before.
Well, did you dislike them before?
Yes, sir.
That was a brief and wholly unscientific sampling of public opinion in Germany and in England. None of the speakers necessarily reflected the dominant opinion in their countries. They were talking about what might happen after the death of the European defense community. Next week, we shall explore this subject again with speakers who may be able to participate in a rather more representative fashion from France, England, and Germany. Good night, and good luck.
For the gift to be remembered, for lasting beauty and heirloom quality, give Hall Light cooking utensils, created by Wherever. The gleaming copper-colored covers always stay bright and shining. They never tarnish. They never need polishing. Hall Light utensils are made of an extra hard, thick alloy that keeps its sparkling beauty. Each Hall Light pan and each copper-colored cover has its own transparent leaf hanger, so they can be hung like pictures to create different and attractive wall arrangements. With friendly-to-food Hall Light utensils, the cooking heat spreads quickly and evenly, not only over the entire bottom of the utensil, but up the sides, too. For that gift of a lifetime, give the most beautiful and the most useful cooking utensils in America today. Hall Light utensils, designed by Wherever. Aluminum, from the ever-expanding facilities of America's foremost producer, Alcoa, Aluminum Company of America.